Hello, my name is Caleb Smith with the Rocket Miner newspaper, here to provide an update for August 26, 2020. Today we've had a lot of talk about impending storms, forecasts, and dealing with tough times. And I'm going to start in the Gulf of Mexico, where Hurricane Laura is going to be striking U.S. soil very shortly. It looks like it will be making landfall in southwestern Louisiana, near the Texas-Louisiana border. It's categorized as a Category 4 hurricane, and forecasters are worried that if the current trend continues, it arrives at high tide, it could potentially generate a 20-foot storm surge. That would be absolutely devastating. Authorities have been imploring, encouraging, begging residents of Texas and Louisiana to evacuate. Not everybody has done so. Some people are unable to do so, choose not to. Other complications. The National Hurricane Center noted that the storm has grown nearly 87% in power over the last 24 hours to a size that it calls extremely dangerous. As it's proceeding, it looks like it will make landfall early Thursday morning and has the potential to be the most powerful hurricane to strike the U.S. so far in 2020. I'm quoting University of Miami hurricane researcher Brian McNulty. He says, quote, "It looked like it's in full beast mode, which is not what you want to see if you're in its way." We're praying and hoping for the best for people caught up in there. Elsewhere, looking at another a kind of downpour and fallout. Multiple high-profile sports games were canceled today due to player protests and boycotts. The ones with the highest stakes were 3 NBA playoff games. Thus far, these postseason games have not been rescheduled. And after that was announced, there were a couple other leagues and sometimes individual players who followed suit. It seems to have been led by the Milwaukee Bucks, who were set to play the Orlando Magic tonight. And they're stressing that they are protesting the shooting by police in Kenosha, Wisconsin on Sunday of Jacob Blake, a black man who appeared to have been shot in the back while his family was watching. The AP notes that Kenosha is about 40 miles south of Milwaukee. And quoting Bucks guard Sterling Brown, he said, "There has been no action, so our focus today cannot be on basketball." In addition to the Bucks Magic game, the playoff games between Oklahoma City and Houston and the LA Lakers and Portland were also canceled, as were 3 WNBA games, 3 Major League Baseball games, and 5 Major League Soccer matches. In addition, two members of the St. Louis Cardinals sat out the team's rivalry game against the Kansas City Royals. The Associated Press notes that the NBA Board of Governors has called an emergency meeting on Thursday to discuss the developments. The NBA Coaches Association released a statement that says, in part, "The baseless shootings of Jacob Blake and other black men and women by law enforcement underscores the need for action. Not after the playoffs, not in the future, but now." A separate statement released by the Bucks team calls for Wisconsin lawmakers to reconvene and take immediate action to, quote, "address issues of police accountability, brutality, and criminal justice reform." One thing that I've personally been talking about with friends and family as of late is news empathy and just trying to wrap your head around stories of people who are protesting, who are trying to deliver messages that are removed from, that are seemingly removed from your situation, from your outlook. Um, what do you do when you're looking around um, your sphere and you think that things are pretty good? I, I believe that race relations are positive. I think people have good interactions with police around here. So what are these other people talking about? Why are they protesting? Um, why are there continuing clashes? And it is easy, if not tempting, to try to dismiss people as, well, they don't know what they're talking about, or they're blowing it out of proportion. It's not really this way, is it? And it takes more time. It takes more sympathy to try to put yourself in others' shoes and consider that maybe the way you view things where you're at and where they do in this other place, perhaps it both is true. And that what's going on over there doesn't invalidate your experience, and what you're experiencing similarly doesn't invalidate what they're seeing. And in some cases, it requires additional steps for you to go, well, maybe I should even further examine where I'm at, ask questions, and maybe there's something that I'm missing. And maybe after you do this additional review, you're going to see, nope, I after double, triple checking where things are, talking to other people, expanding my viewpoint, I think that I'm feeling pretty good about where my take on things. Or you may also have to admit that maybe there's more going around and more to be addressed closer to home than what you first realized. Everybody's outlook's going to be a little bit different wherever you're at. Everybody's perspectives, by definitions, even two people standing right next to each other are seeing things at a slightly different angle. It's, like I said, it requires us to invest more contemplation, more consideration with these things. And we're going to have to be doing that more, especially in Wyoming. One of the things that the last forecast I'd like to touch on today came up during Governor Mark Gordon's semi-regular press conference. He was in Rock Springs yesterday at the events complex, where he gave a preview of some of the 10% budget cuts that were going to be announced today. He talked some big picture stuff, and today he was able to go into more specifics about what the state's going to have to do differently as we're facing about a $1 billion revenue shortfall with the downturn in especially energy, oil, natural gas, coal, all that. And there's not just one thing that can be targeted, and we scratch that off and we can keep doing things the rest of the way. One of the things that the governor said yesterday in Rock Springs, we've repeated today in his press conference, and I've seen him quoted elsewhere as saying this, is that even if the state fires every single employee, that will still not make up for the loss of money that's in programs and funding, and that's directed to communities or programs or services. Not that you'd have anybody to direct that stuff anyway, but that alone isn't going to solve the problem. And that means that there are going to be hard decisions about which programs, what services that have been supported in the past that are going to be discontinued. And it started to take shape. Some of those areas, cuts to across the line, whether it's job placement programs, food initiatives, cuts to the Department of Health. One of the few areas that the governor didn't quite touch on was education, and he stressed that just constitutionally he's not quite sure what he can be done. It's his understanding that needs to be some things are going to be more for legislature. But one of the things they said in the meantime is that he strongly encouraged school districts across the state to also strive to make a similar 10% cut to see what they can tighten themselves. trying to give as much deference to local control and local understanding as much as possible. And I mean, one of the things he repeated and stressed was, you can't make a 10% cut to the state budget and not lose services that were previously enjoyed and made a difference. You can't make a 10% cut to the state budget and not lose positions, and that means people being fired, people losing family breadwinners, losing their livelihood, and that continues to go down the line, because that means that these families are putting less money into the communities where they live. That means that they may have to pull up roots and leave behind the state where they would have preferred to stay if they could have, if the funding had stayed the same. It's one of those things where it takes sacrifice now, and it's going to take sacrifice later. And the more we can figure out now, the better we think things will be. But that doesn't diminish the harshness. And just because you take away the funding doesn't mean that the needs disappear too. And this is an opportunity for us as individuals, as families, as neighbors, as community, as the good people of Wyoming, to see where we can stand up. And I'm not expecting there to be some billionaire in our midst to step up and offer to cover all the lost funding. That'd be nice. I think it's completely unreasonable and nothing that we should count on. But we should still be actively searching and seizing opportunities to do some good. And that might be donating at the next time you're in the grocery store, just picking up a couple extra cans to drop off the soup kitchen, making a small contribution to the local diaper bank so that they can buy needed supplies for families with young children. That could mean volunteering a little bit. That could mean calling that person that you've been meaning to, checking in on people who see, how are you weathering these times? It's taking a half hour to listen to somebody as they tell you their story. No, it's not the same thing as putting money directly in their hand, but a person who knows that they're being listened to, that has value. And we should just be actively doing our part to help make up the difference. And I'm hopeful that people are generous where they can be, and try to err on the side of caution and compassion. 2020 has just been a complete kick in the teeth year. But that doesn't mean that we can't try to find some extra bits of brightness along the way. Or if we can't find them in the dark, to spark some ourselves. This is Caleb Smith with the Rocket Miner newspaper, wishing you a good day and a safe tomorrow. Bye.